We begin with some breaking news. Germany has expelled 2 Russian diplomats over the brazen killing of a Georgian citizen in Berlin. Prosecutors suspect Russian or Chechen involvement in the attack. The victim has been named as Zelimkhan Khangoshvili, a former Chechen rebel commander. He was shot dead in broad daylight in a public park last August. A suspect named only as Vadim M has been taken into custody. Russia denies any involvement and says it will retaliate against the expulsions. Now, DW's political correspondent Kate Brady is following that story for us. Welcome, Kate. First, tell us about the expulsion of these 2 Russian diplomats and the circumstances.
Well, what we know so far is that the Foreign Ministry here in Berlin released a statement just within the last hour or two saying that 2 Russian diplomats were being expelled from the Russian embassy. Now, it's not clear yet exactly what positions they held there at the Russian embassy here in Berlin, but what we do know is that they were working at the embassy. They were here as diplomats and as such are now being expelled from the country. The Foreign Ministry said that this was due to information from the German Federal Prosecution, which indicated that Moscow could have been behind this killing. Now, of course, that is still to be confirmed, but in its statement, the German Foreign Ministry said that it had reached out to Russian authorities on several occasions since this killing in August for more clarity on this killing, and said that they had not yet had a sufficient explanation or help from Russian authorities. And so, on the grounds of this information from the German Federal Prosecution, they decided to take action and expel these 2 Russian diplomats.
OK, Kate, stay with us for a bit, because let's first take a look at this report with more details on the killing.
Soon after the assassination in Berlin, suspicions arose that the Russian intelligence services were involved. The victim, a Georgian national, fought in the Chechen war against Russia. The suspected killer is a 49-year-old Russian currently in custody. Germany's Federal Prosecutors Office has now officially taken over the investigation.
There's a lot of evidence, including the fact that the suspect was already wanted for murder in Russia. Then he disappeared before reappearing under a new identity. That's one of the key factors here.
The killing in Berlin could be similar to the poison gas attack carried out in Britain on double agent Sergej Skripal and his daughter in March 2017. That prompted many Western countries to impose sanctions on Russia. The Russian government, meanwhile, has consistently denied any involvement and is refusing to cooperate in the investigation.
Now, returning to Kate Brady. Kate, what do we know about the man who's been killed, has been named as Zelimkhan Khangoshvili, and why he might have been the target of an assassination?
Exactly. So he was killed just around the corner from here in the Kleiner Tiergarten in August of this year. And what we know so far is that he was an asylum seeker of Chechen descent from Georgia, and he actually fought on against the Russians in the Second Chechen War in the early 2000s. So he fought against the Russians, and also after the war, he reportedly also worked in Ukraine and in Georgia, and those were thought to be on in jobs that were against Russian interests, is what we've learnt so far. And DW actually spoke to his ex-wife earlier this year as well, and in her words, she said, referring to his killing, we were warned that this would happen eventually. Interestingly, as well, as I mentioned, he had applied for asylum here in Germany, and that was rejected, and he had actually been slated for deportation. And that's everything we know about the victim so far, but of course, as this inquiry goes on, it seems that we will most likely learn more about his background and connections to Russia, as is most likely the case as well for the suspected perpetrator.
And what about the man that the German police has taken into custody? He's been named as Vadim M. Have any more details emerged about him?
Well, what we know so far from the prosecution is that he was actually wanted for a suspected murder already in Russia, and that has, as we heard there in the report, played a key role apparently so far in the prosecution's investigation. Of course, he is still in custody. And of course, as this case develops, it's now in the hands of the federal prosecution, which, worth pointing out, is they usually only take care of cases which are seen as a crime against the state, which gives you an indication of the severity of this case and how this is being regarded both by the German government and by the federal prosecution here in Germany. But we will be expecting to just get more information as those investigations continue.
Now, of course, Moscow has reacted with anger to the expulsion of the two diplomats. What more can you tell us about the Russian reaction?
Well, the Russian reaction was almost immediate earlier today when those two Russian diplomats were expelled from Berlin. Now, Russia has said that, well, it denied once again, actually, this afternoon, the Kremlin spokesperson denied any Russian involvement or involvement of Russian authorities in that killing in August. And it said as well, the Kremlin said that it would be retaliating with similar sanctions. So we could expect to see German diplomats expelled from Russia or even other sanctions. And the Kremlin described the expulsion of these two Russian diplomats as unfriendly and unfounded, and that it would be, as I mentioned, retaliating, as what it said, accordingly and in a similar manner to which Germany has reacted so far.
Kate Brady, DW's political correspondent, thank you very much for that.